dubious. Whenever a giant pharmacy chain cuts out $2 billion from their bottom line, I have to think there's more going on than feel-good posturing and clever marketing. Maybe the president threatened some executive action if CVS didn't 86 cigarettes from its shelves. Maybe there's some obscure paragraph tucked within the recesses of Obamacare forbidding drug sellers from peddling tobacco as well. If they really cared about our health and well-being, they'd stop selling NyQuil, OxyContin, and peanut M&Ms. Because those things will kill you. Oh yeah, the judge is here. We've got Andy Levy on a spicy panel, and we're ready to raise the roof on a Wednesday. This is The Independent. Hi there, I'm Kennedy. I'm ready for spring. Are you? Indeed. I'm joined by Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch and Camille Foster from Free Think Media. We are The Independents, and we have a buffet of delicious topics to go over with our beloved friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. So let's start cooking. First up, we got CVS. They are no longer selling cigarettes in 7,600 stores, and it could reportedly cost them dearly, up to $2 billion. Do you share my suspicion, Judge?
Well, this is the natural right and the common law right to sell what you want and to refuse to sell what you want or to whomever you want. I don't know what the motivation for this is. The stated motivation is we are a different kind of drugstore. We have the Medi-Centers in the drugstore. We promote health. We don't want to have anything to do with tobacco. The government is probably not happy about this because tobacco is the only product sold in the United States of America where the sales tax on the product costs more than the product does.
Isn't that crazy?
So if CVS is going to lose $2 billion, the government is going to lose $2 billion on this as well.
Yeah.
CVS and Caremark are the 7th largest corporate lobbyist in the country, according to fourth quarter filings. The 20th largest all last year.
Right.
They're becoming more of a healthcare company. And if you're a healthcare company, that means you're basically a Medicaid company. They spend all this money lobbying Medicaid. You don't smell a rat a little bit here?
If there is a rat here, it would be something down the road. There's nothing in Obamacare for this, and the government probably is more interested in revenue than in anything else. So I'd be surprised if the government is behind this. I would also not be surprised if a place like the city of New York gives them a hard time for discriminating against smokers by not selling products that they used to smoke. But the real motivation of the city would be that enormous sales tax that it collects. The sales tax is city, state, and federal on tobacco.
You would think, but you would think they would lay off their anti-smoking campaigns. But the president is congratulating CVS, saying this is directly going to save lives.
Like within 5 minutes, too.
I don't know that it will save lives. It'll just send smokers elsewhere. I mean, CVS is huge, but here in New York City, you can buy cigarettes almost anywhere. But you can't buy it in the waiting room of a hospital. You can't buy cigarettes or tobacco products in an emergency room. And CVS wants to market itself that way. God bless them. They have every right to market themselves that way. They have every right to sell whatever lawful product they want to sell and not to sell whatever lawful product they don't want to sell.
I wish you didn't need a prescription for everything. That's so stupid.
Well, I'm with you on that. I wish we didn't have an FDA. I wish you could put in your body whatever you wanted to put in your body.
Well, I'm glad I
But we live
didn't
in a big fat nanny state,
Yeah.
whether Mike Bloomberg's the mayor or not.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. All right, very good. Well, Iowa Congressman Chuck Grassley is looking for a little clarification on the president's aggressive executive orders. He wants Attorney General Eric Holder to release opinions, analyses, and conclusions, but will and must Holder comply?
Well, I don't think he will comply. This administration's Justice Department did something that even the Bush Justice Department didn't do right after 9/11, and that is saying something, and that is arguing to a federal judge that its legal rationale is a classified secret. Now, legal rationale is based upon publicly existing laws and publicly existing judicial opinions. You may draw a different interpretation from the baseline, but the baseline is public. I have never seen or heard, other than outside of this argument by this Justice Department, that legal rationale is a national security secret. Guess what? The judge accepted that nonsense. And in the particular case here in Manhattan, having to do with the legal authority for dispatching drones to kill Americans. Subsequent to that, Attorney General Holder gave a novel and inarticulate speech at Northwestern University Law School, at which he said, well, the president's careful consideration for using drones is an adequate substitute for due process required under the Constitution. There's no authority for that. Will Senator Grassley get Attorney General Holder to cough up? Probably not. Certainly not until the executive orders are signed. They will never, ever cough up ahead of time what their rationale is. My guess is they won't even cough it up after he signs.
Well, Judge, I mean, the president has described this as his year of action, but conspicuously absent are really bold plans and initiatives. Is there anything that you see on the horizon that is particularly disconcerting? And another related question, the president has said that he's calling up the heads of various companies and asking them to do various things, but there aren't any laws. There aren't any regulations. We're not aware of any threats being made. Are you concerned about any of that? And does it run afoul of the Constitution?
I'll tell you why I'm concerned. The president is the chief executive officer of the executive branch of the federal government. If you count the military, he has over 3 million people that work for him. He and his predecessors have issued many, many executive orders basically telling them how to do their job.
And they're not all evil.
No, they're not. On the contrary, when an executive order supplements or complements or explains a law, that's the president's job. But when an executive order frustrates a law or tells the recipient of it how to get around the law, as this president has done, then he is not doing his job. His oath says he shall faithfully enforce the laws. Faithfully was inserted in there by the framers to make sure that presidents enforced laws even that they didn't like, that they didn't change the law by the manner in which they enforce it. And that's what he's done with respect to immigration, with respect to the Environmental Protection Agency, and even with respect to his own beloved Obamacare. He suddenly, on his own, changed the effective date of it. And when Congress offered to make that change lawful, he threatened to veto that legislation if Congress changed it.
So I don't know if he's a tyrant or a crazy person.
He wants to be a tyrant. He wants to be able to change laws on his own, and he doesn't want Congress to change the laws for him. Oh, yeah, and that's extremely dangerous.
Great
and that's
civil libertarian who
that's what I'm fearful of.
Was a constitutional law professor. Good job.
How many times does he remind us he taught the Constitution at the University of Chicago Law School? It's indisputable that he did, but it's not indisputable that he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, get ready for some soccer in Orlando. A judge has ruled the city can bulldoze some buildings thanks to eminent domain. The one church is still holding out for a Hail Mary. They want $35 million from the city, but it looks like they're going to get flattened by the government. What's going on with this case?
Well, this is unprecedented that the government can condemn a church for a parking lot for a soccer stadium. Now, it almost doesn't matter what they were going to condemn it for, because the existence of the church is expressly protected by the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. The government simply has no authority to trump the free exercise clause by saying to this church, we'll give you some cash, you can rebuild a church around the block.
But surely this isn't the first time a church has been eminent domained, right?
This is the first time that a church has been eminent domained against its will. Now, you know me. I condemn the concept of eminent domain because to me, to the Jeffersonians, probably to all of us and to most people watching us, the only moral transaction change of ownership of property is one that's truly voluntary, not one where the government comes at you with a stick saying, sell me the property for what I think it's worth or else. And the or else is very heavy-handed, because the government gets the property before the eminent domain case is resolved.
So do they have a free exercise claim here?
Yes, they do, and they lost it. Now, I think it will be reversed by the Florida Supreme Court, but as I said, the government gets the property first. So the Florida Supreme Court may get around to reversing this after the soccer stadium is built.
Yeah, and after the church is flattened.
Has been flattened.
And can we blame this on Kelo versus New London?
Yes, you can blame it on Kelo versus New London, the Supreme Court case that says as long as the value of the property goes up after the condemnation, the government can condemn it for whatever purpose it wants. The government's not going to own this soccer stadium. It's going to be owned by a profit-making entity. But that profit-making entity is going to pay more real estate taxes than the church does, because the church doesn't pay any real estate taxes.
I love soccer, but I think you'd have a hard time justifying that that's a public good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Pleasure, guys.
Thank you for being here.
All the best to you.
Thank you very much. Well, good news for some students, more free time to celebrate Muslim holidays. Andy Levy heads our party panel next. And later on, where's the love? It's the return of your hate mail. What have we done to forsaken you? Welcome back to The Independents, the show that is gooier than a gummy bear and sweeter than raspberry jam. It's time to convene our party panel. I was going to say compete, but there's no hot Olympics here. Let's welcome Crystal Wright. She's the editor and publisher of the blog Conservative Black Chick, a job that I turned down, frankly. And back on the board, he's the Isaac to my Julie on this love boat. It's Fox News Red Eye co-host Andy Levy. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I was thinking the other day that Doc, the character, had to have died of syphilis.
Really?
Yeah. We can't have that much penicillin on the Love Boat. And he got bizzow quite a bit. Well, cops are rounding up heroin dealers in Lower Manhattan, hoping to get a handle on the bad smack that killed Philip Seymour Hoffman. But are we missing the point on this actor's death? Is it being exploited by both sides who have an agenda? Andy Levy.
Well, I think these arrests send a strong and important message to drug dealers. Do not sell your product to rich, famous white guys, because you will get caught.
Good point.
You know, you got to stick to the
Finally,
street.
the scourge is over.
Absolutely, yeah. I have a theory, which I freely admit might be garbage. Heroin use is up, and they say that 80% of people that try heroin for the first time had previously used prescription pain meds. Well, prescription pain meds have become a lot harder to get. They put a lot more controls on them. Doctors don't want to give them out because they're afraid they'll get investigated by the government,
and they're expensive.
And they're expensive. So my theory is that people who previously used prescription pain meds, a lot of them for legitimate reasons, are now turning to heroin, which is far more dangerous. And the beauty of this theory is it makes it the government's fault, which fits in with my worldview, so I really like the theory.
Okay, can I just tell you something? My brother, when he was a police officer, worked in a city where there was a lot of drug use and there was a lot of heroin use, and they would find kids as young as 14 hooked on heroin, and he said it's because they used to steal pain medication, especially Oxy, from their parents' medicine cabinets, ran out of it, couldn't afford to buy it on the street, and heroin was cheaper.
I got hot steaming data for all of you from the Reason.com blog. Jacob Sullum, who's a great drug writer, says that between 2011 and 2012, the number of past month heroin users went up from 281,000 to 335,000, and OxyContin users down from 434 to 358. So it bolsters your theory. It's a partial. The data is a little bit more messy.
Yeah,
than
so
that,
maybe it's government regulation that's actually creating more black market drug users.
The clear takeaway here is that the drug war is totally lost. This very public figure had enough heroin in his home to dose a small village, and it's illegal.
It's illegal. Crystal, what do you think about this?
Well, you know, I'm going to sound really mean, but I know, what's new, right? That's what I do, conservative black chick. But no, what bothers me about this is that we have all this sympathy for Seymour Hoffman. Look, I'm sorry he's dead. I was sorry when Whitney Houston died. I was sorry when Michael Jackson died, you know.
Were you sorry when James Gandolfini died?
I mean, I'm sorry when they're all dead, right?
Well, how's that any different?
But here's the thing. You know, you have kids as young as 11 years old trying heroin. I mean, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, right? And we know this is a huge problem, but oh God, when a celebrity dies because of their own volition. Seymour Hoffman was an addict. He didn't get help. And I think what's really troublesome about this, he's an example of Hollywood excess. All his friends, including George Clooney's like, oh, you know, I had dinner with him a couple months ago. I didn't know. Really, George? I mean, all the producers around him.
Junkies are actually really good at hiding their addictions. You know, and if you talk to heroin users, and I've actually spoken directly with former heroin users who say it's the one drug that you can actually function while abusing.
Okay, but he actually Seymour Hoffman revealed himself to a reporter, I think, at Sundance. He said, I'm a heroin addict. What I'm saying is,
and that wasn't reported until after he died.
Okay, but look,
right, I know, but I hear what you're saying, but I really find it hard to believe when Seymour Hoffman had a history that people around him didn't know. But remember, they make money off of him as a celebrity.
What are you saying that all of his friends are supposed to be so nosy?
But it's also, no, I don't think his friends are nosy. But look, if
it's also not that his friends didn't know. And yes,
not just friends, but
for him to say I'm a heroin addict, he's been to rehab for his heroin addiction.
He's at risk.
He knew he was a heroin addict. People who go to rehab don't come out and say, oh, you never say I'm a former addict. It makes perfect sense for him to say I'm a heroin addict. And he did try to get help. He went to rehab. Unfortunately, it didn't work.
I just don't feel that sorry for him. Long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, it may not be a surprise to you now after the fact, but that doesn't mean that George Clooney, who supposedly enjoys a good tipple.
Yeah.
Is that any different? Are we going to be surprised if George Clooney someday I hope not. That's not what I'm saying. Very good. I love you, George. You know that. You should totally invite me to Lake Como. That wouldn't be weird. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has ordered 2 more days off for public school kids to celebrate Muslim holidays with all the religions and all the festivals. Are New York City students ever in school?
No, as a father of a 5-year-old.
Yeah, you've got a child in a New York City public school.
They compensate this. It sucks because you have to watch your kid for a day, and that's rough for
Now
everybody.
2 more.
But you then also don't get your car towed on street cleaning and stuff on those same days. So it's a trade-off. I think teachers don't want to work in New York City.
I think the unions own de Blasio, and I think that's why he wants to go after the charter schools.
Although Joe Lhota, Republican hero, who only lost by 75 percentage points and once described himself as libertarian, so hooray for us, he also backed these same holidays when he was running for...
Right. But what about Diwali?
I also back them.
Well, yeah, Diwali.
In New York, schools are closed for Jewish holidays because there's a significant Jewish population. I'm guessing in areas of the country where there's not a significant Jewish population, the schools are open on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So to me, this is why the less centralized decision making is, the better. If you're in an area where there's a large Muslim population, shut the schools on major
including
Muslim
little
holidays.
neighborhoods.
But Camille, you just Camille,
but that's
because Camille has a good point about
there
this.
There is a better solution still, which is all of the most contentious issues that we run into are in these places where we have the government stepping in to try to deliver a particular service. Why don't we get them out of the business of educating children altogether? They kind of stink at it. It's way too expensive. And then we will find the correct balance in the market.
And you know what? There aren't enough little urchins in the subway putting their digits into your pockets.
But to me, this is like snow days. Each school district said, some school districts stay open when it snows, others close. Let each school district decide.
Yeah, let each family decide. How about you get 5 days as a family, and if you want to spend them on Christmas or Festivus
or whatever, let the principal allocate. I like your idea. Localize it. But again, this means getting the bureaucracy out of dictating to
Okay, well,
schools
this is what we need to do. We need to keep holidays safe, legal, and rare.
That's right.
Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie joins us next. Some folks say he's one of the more libertarian members of Congress, but we will find out. Stay with us.
Don't leave notes, then we spoke of the rain. Always back to the rain. I was speaking to...
Welcome back to The Independent. It's pretty trendy to be a libertarian in Congress nowadays, but it can also be very divisive. In an era of unmatched spending and zealous application of government power, there are some surprising voices rising up from the Capitol. Thomas Massie is a Kentucky congressman who shares some of our views when it comes to limiting the scope of government. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. Great to be on your show.
Well, thanks for coming. Your colleague Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, thinks journalist Glenn Greenwald is pushing stolen material that he got from Edward Snowden. Is this an irresponsible statement on the part of Mike Rogers?
I don't know. They've thrown a lot of jello at the wall. First, they said the Chinese were involved, and they said the Russians were involved, and now I haven't heard about this latest piece of jello they've thrown at the wall, but I think they're just trying to see what sticks.
You are in the Liberty Movement caucus, have been pretty strong on this kind of NSA surveillance stuff, Edward Snowden revelations. It's a big split between the Mike Rogerses of the world and the Peter Kings of the world. Who's in the middle that's waffling right now? Are you starting to sway hearts and minds of people who traditionally had been very, very hawkish and protective of the national security state?
I think we're swaying a lot of minds, and it's really the American public that's swaying the minds. We had a vote. Justin Amash was the primary sponsor of an amendment that would have defunded what we think is unconstitutional spying. I was a co-sponsor of that amendment. It almost passed the House. But since then, we've had members come to us and say, if you could get that to a vote again, we would vote for it, because we went back to our districts and we heard from our people, and we're ready to vote for it. You mentioned the chairman. One thing that I want to tell people that I've observed from being on the other side of the curtain here and being in Congress is there's a lot of power concentrated with the chairman of the Select Intelligence Committee. When the president goes out on the news and says that everybody in Congress knew about this program, what he really meant to say is he told the chairman of the Select Intelligence Committee this, and it was up to the chairman to decide, and he's actually withholding quite a bit of information from members of Congress. I think our founding fathers would be appalled to know that only one person in Congress gets to know this information, and the rest of our elected officials can't see it.
Well, Congressman, is there an appetite to do something about the amount of secrecy that there is on Capitol Hill?
There's a tremendous appetite from the public, but also on Capitol Hill. You know, even Jim Sensenbrenner, the author, the primary sponsor of the Patriot Act, now has a bill to rein in the Patriot Act. He says he never imagined it would be interpreted by the administration this way. In fact, he was assured this wouldn't happen, and now it has happened, his greatest fears. So he's a sponsor of a bill that has some reforms in there. What we need is more visibility for Congress into what's going on with this law and the FISA courts. Can you imagine if our founding fathers knew that we had secret courts that were making secret decisions and elected officials couldn't see those decisions? That's where we are today. But fortunately, there is an appetite here in Congress to reform that, just not among the leadership and the chairman of a few of these committees. We need to change their opinions on these things.
Well, as more states contemplate things like legalizing marijuana, there are more discussions about drug policy, particularly in sentencing and mandatory minimums for nonviolent offenders. How much leeway do judges have, and can Congress do anything to make their job easier?
You know, this is a bipartisan issue. I'm on a bill with Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia. He's a Democrat, member of the Congressional Black Caucus. We're trying to give judges more flexibility in sentencing. We don't think that Congress has the right answer for all of these sentences. It really should be up to the judges to decide. And on the point of marijuana, you know, I haven't come out in favor of legalization or even legalization for medical uses.
You can do it now. It's fine, right here on the show if you like to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, nobody's watching, but no, what I did want to say is we had a really big victory in the Farm Bill that was buried back on page 699, if you can get to that page. We got industrial hemp legalized in the Farm Bill. That's a big, huge victory. We got a definition of industrial hemp that separates it from its cousin in the cannabis family, marijuana. And this will allow states to do pilot programs to start testing the viability of industrial hemp in this country, although we already know it's viable and has many uses.
Yes, especially other people who serve in your part of the country. So that is the one piece of good news to come out of such a porky piece of legislation. Well, Congressman, let me ask you one last thing. On Friday, we are doing a show, Living Off the Grid, where we talk about survivalism, we talk about prepping, and we know that you are a huge fan of living off the grid. Tell me about your love of this lifestyle briefly, if you could.
Well, yeah, I live off the grid. My whole family's set up. It's awesome. You know, if you've ever been to Monticello and seen Thomas Jefferson's place, I can't imagine that guy running high voltage lines to his farm. If he had solar panels back then, he would be making his own electricity. That's what I do. Again, my farm is kind of like Galt's Gulch, except we've got kids there too.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming by. We appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, if the Congressman's life off the grid interests you, then do join us on Friday night at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, and re-airing at midnight. We're doing a special hour called Off the Grid about the strange lives of preppers, surviving disasters, and maybe having some encrypted devices. All that's going to be Friday night. It's going to be awesome. All right, the Olympics are only 2 days away, and already some big-name athletes are hurt. George Zimmerman is about to get his ass kicked, and e-cigarettes are just horrible, according to that pruny prude Chuck Schumer. Topical Storm, next. Welcome to the Topical Storm, the home of the news vortex. So good you're here. Topic number one. Infamous ground stander George Zimmerman has agreed to a celebrity boxing match with rapper DMX. Does he have a killer left hook? DMX expressed his excitement to TMZ, saying, "I'm going to beat the living out of him. I'm breaking every rule in boxing to make sure I him right up." Well, that's enthusiasm. I, for one, would pay money to watch it.
If he doesn't beat the living crap out of him, oh man. I mean, talk about, he's going to be on the butt end of every single rap song for like a decade.
Well, I would not sell Mr. Zimmerman short, only looking at just their mug shots. I took a look at the fight, took it very seriously here. DMX is about 5'11", a bit wiry. Mr. Zimmerman, 5'7", 30 years old. DMX, 43. I don't know.
He's still got the reach.
I have to look at this.
He's got the reach, and he's been in prison.
I still think DMX wins, but I think he wins because he probably bites beats him several times in the first round.
As he's promised he would, and he should.
Given his affection for dogs.
He's also been in trouble with the law more than George Zimmerman last year, even. I think he was arrested 4 different times.
But he's never shot and killed anyone.
And whoever wins the fight gets to impregnate Casey Anthony. That's so gross. Oh, God. Topic number 2. It's your justice system. You screwed it up, Florida. Good job. Charles Schumer should get his own show called Really Super Nanny because he wants to make sure you're safe and coddled in every aspect of life. The pedantic patrician and his friends want to ban e-cigarettes on Capitol Hill because they're just too similar to actual cigarettes, and putting things in your mouth is wrong and bad and leads to a bad reputation. So says my mom. Why are they going after e-cigarettes? I don't understand this. It doesn't make any sense.
Because they're the party of science, right? If I hear one more time, I'm not a Republican, I'm never going to be a Republican, but if I hear one more time a Democrat say, oh, these Republicans are the party that hates science, we're the party that actually likes science, anytime they do any kind of ruling against e-cigarettes, let alone breakfast cereal, which Chuck Schumer was also railing against in the 90s. It's just a disaster. This stuff is so much better for you than inhaled or even dipped tobacco. It's ridiculous. They're doing it because they're jerks.
My theory is that the president actually wants to protect his own habit, his secret smoking habit. So he covertly carries out this war against e-cigarettes so that Michelle can't say, well, why don't you just try the e-cigarette thing? Why don't you just try the e-cigarette thing? He doesn't
my
do
doctor
it.
friends, they tell their patients that when they're trying to get them to quit smoking.
Yeah.
It could be very good. All
Obama
right.
would be the best pitchman ever for e-cigarettes. Whoops.
That's true.
Topic number 3, Olympic gold medalist and reluctant ginger. Shaun White will not seek 2 medals in the Winter Olympics. He is pulled out of the slopestyle competition because he's worried. Like everything else in Sochi, the conditions are so crappy, he could get hurt. But the true story here, he could actually get spanked by other riders, much more so than a halfpipe. He's not as good at slopestyle. Mark McMorris, here's looking at you, Canadian fool. This could be your year. I'm not Canadian. I want Americans to win, but what do you think?
Are you going to disclose your connection to the snowboard competing industry?
I invented the Olympics. Yes, and I have $1 billion snowboarding plane.
1 billion.
Crafted of solid platinum. And there, it has been disclosed. Topic number 4. Thank you. You can't have a gun-free zone without letting people know they can't bring guns to your zone. But one Illinois principal is taking issue with the logo of a black gun inside a red circle and slash. She's worried even showing a picture of a gun will alarm people. Or worse, they'll think at one point it was okay to bring a gun to school. This is incredible to me.
Yes.
The next thing to get outlawed, air guns, right?
I doubt you can take an air gun to school.
Yeah, that's almost all.
I thought you meant like a Nerf air gun.
like the
Even this
snap,
gesture,
like-
even this gesture can get you
the
suspended
Isaac
in
from the
many
Love
public
Boat
schools.
gesture,
I'm
yes.
sure that's happened someplace in America.
It's always got to be the love boat with you. At my school, my daughter's school, you weren't allowed to bring any kind of, you couldn't dress up as a cowboy or an Indian because they have, or a pirate because they have weapons on the dress-up day, which wasn't called Halloween.
If they're good cowboys or Indians or pirates and worth their salt, they have weapons.
What's great is that they all brought their weapons anyways because who cares?
Yeah.
They're kids.
Well done, New York City public school students. Well, coming up next, is immigration a good idea, or is the GOP signing their own death warrant? A surprising view on immigration I guarantee you ain't heard yet on the internets. It's The Independent.
My vocals be traveling, unraveling my abdomen and slime is babbling, grammatics that are masculine. I grab them in, verbally badgering broads. I wish them.
I lived in front of a flying bullet for you, so our difference started
Oh, hi. With the midterm elections dangling before hungry Republicans like a pungent ball of cheese, those congressional mice are trying to figure out how to fatten their list of potential voters. Some, like Ted Cruz and Ann Coulter, are saying it's committing party suicide. Is broad reform throwing too much government at a non-problem? We're joined by Shika Damia. She is a senior policy analyst at the Reason Foundation. So, Shika, oh, chic one. Tell me where we stand on immigration right now, because it's become one of those issues, a hot potato that we didn't get to last year. And there are a lot of Senate Republicans who don't want to get to it this year. But what's the difference between the plans in the House and Senate, and where do we stand?
Actually, the weird thing is that the Republican plan, the GOP House plan right now, is more draconian than the Senate plan, the Senate Republican plan, which they had already agreed to. So it's now the Senate Republicans are worried that they lose the Senate if they push this issue too hard. So they are getting cold feet.
Yeah. Do you think that that's going to turf the whole thing?
Yes, I mean, I think they've already said it's not going anywhere, that they have to, if they're going to do anything about it, it'll have to be after the November elections.
When you see these Ann Coulter kind of comments that this is going to commit some kind of demographic suicide for Republicans here, I saw a thing Roger L. Simon at PJ Media put forth a modest proposal of let's take the electoral pain out of this for everybody, and of all people who are going to be amnestied in to citizenship if they decide not to touch back in another country, let's just tell them you get everything, but you can't vote ever.
Yep.
Is that a way to sort of depoliticize this thing?
Rush Limbaugh had proposed something similar a few months ago. He said, give them amnesty, but don't let them vote for 12 years, and I'll go for the plan.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, so I actually think that it's not a good plan for America, and for the reasons opposite to what the restrictionists say. The problem is that you get this, group of people who can't vote, but they can be taxed. So you get taxation without representation, which is, not a good thing, given America's commitment to equality and all those good things. But I think it's still something worth considering, because right now these people live in fear of being deported, and that's a huge problem for them.
But if you
legalize them.
Yes, but if you took away that fear,
yes,
and you understand they're still breaking the law. It's still illegal immigration. So therefore, and maybe you consider it a special kind of felony. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to vote, and that neutralizes the politicization of the issue.
Right, exactly. So it takes the politics of it, the bad political consequences that the GOP fears out of it, and you give them a way to stay here legally. I would go for that if that was combined with a good guest worker program with Mexico, so that you're not feeding this problem in the future. So you're not creating more and more illegal people in this country who then can't get amnesty and then can't vote and what have you.
But it sounds like, that sort of pragmatic approach to actually trying to address the immigration issue would get us a little bit closer to normalizing these citizens. People like this are actually being abused in weird landlord situations, being treated by a totally different legal code. It certainly seems to me that conservatives would be able to get behind the issue from that perspective and sell it particularly well
but
to the
you see, that would be a reasonable thing, Camille, but the problem is that Republicans in the House are saying they won't even go for this till they have a complete fort on the southern border. They want, in the House bill that the principles that they've just approved, what they want is a guarantee that the border has been sealed, and only then will some of these amnesty and other provisions go through. Well, that's impossible. You can't ever guarantee that the border is perfectly sealed now. So I think this is just a way to kill any kind of future reform.
Okay, but you've seen the problems with so much government intervention in healthcare.
Yes.
Why would Republicans think, when they could run unlimited government, which is the point that Nick Gillespie made in the Daily Beast, why would they think that throwing this much government at something as complex as immigration is going to solve the problem?
Beats me. I think that's an excellent question. Look, on border security, we spent $5 billion. We've spent $45 billion since 9/11. That's 100-fold increase. They want to militarize the border. They want 24-hour drone surveillance. They want all kinds of things, and they can't solve the problem. And what do they think the solution is? Throwing more money at the border and more interior enforcement, which is E-Verify for employers in the country, and also means that every American, not illegals, not immigrants, but every American has to get a permission slip from the government to work.
Yeah,
and this is the
work.
Republican plan.
And you can so easily get thrown out of your ability to work, as Matt pointed out earlier, by having something as simple as a name change through marriage.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely.
Represent. That's right. Oh, well, Shika, thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
It will be a continued discussion, certainly. So whenever you're in New York or even Detroit, we want to talk to you.
Absolutely, anytime.
Right. Beautiful. Well, the panel is back to shove some more pork in your farm bill. That's going to be uncomfortable. And your hate mail, you nasty brutes. How dare you? It's the Independents. This is The Independence, where every day is like Wednesday, and every panel is a party. Let's welcome back Crystal and Andy. Welcome back, Crystal and Andy.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy hands. The Farm Bill is porkier than a pack of Sunday bacon. It's an embarrassing receptacle for bipartisan pet projects, a $17 million catfish oversight plan, the creation of a national Christmas tree board that taxes 15 cents per tree, every single Christmas tree sold in the country, and a new board to create standards for the identity of honey. Why the Farm Bill?
Is that
why?
Is that Christmas tree thing real?
It's real.
Totally real.
Right.
Holy cow. Why the Farm Bill? Because sugar producers don't want competition, and the fact that they impoverish every potential candy maker out there by making domestic sugar twice as expensive as everything else doesn't matter, because those people don't lobby as much as the domestic sugar producers. It's awful. Tim Carney had a great column in the Washington Examiner I recommend to everybody, in which he describes this as the least defensible corporate welfare boondoggle out there. And he said that this happened because of the fact that the federal government owns 30% of all land in America, which is strange, but think about it, in Arizona and Utah and whatnot. And they usually pay...
Better than the Queen of England, right?
They usually, since they can't get property taxes on this, they have to pay the federal government sort of a fee to the states. They usually pay that fee in a separate bill, but they thought, we don't have to do it because that separate bill is going to pass, so let's do it to make this disgusting corporate welfare boondoggle pass with Republican votes by buying them off with their transfer fee.
Ooh.
To Colorado and Utah.
Fired up, ready to go.
Yeah, and what's most interesting about this new Farm Bill is that a lot of the branding and marketing around it was, oh, there are cuts to entitlements in this package. No, this is about 40% larger than the previous Farm Bill.
$8 billion in cuts compared to a $1 trillion.
Compared to a $1 trillion program. And the other dark secret is this isn't a Farm Bill. Most of the money in this bill is entitlements, and there's at least a quarter or a third of it that we could probably eliminate tomorrow and only injure people who are just getting government kickbacks. And I mean really wealthy people who are just getting government
if so many people are outraged, and, you know, conservatives, liberals, libertarians, everyone's outraged. I mean, I imagine that you're upset by this, Crystal, right?
Well, I just want to know how I can be a farmer and get something for, you know, in the bill you can get a research grant or a loan for researching wool. So I guess I need to knit or think of some company, or, you know, and no, seriously. You know, the Democrats spun it. They said, this is going to save 16 million jobs. So now the government is deciding what food is better than other food. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street or Electric Company. One of these things is, I'm going to get in trouble.
If we keep saving jobs, we're not going to have any left.
Right, but somebody else did that on another program, and she got in a lot of trouble. But no, it's ridiculous. You know, they said we're going to cut the direct payments to farmers. By the way, you know, and that's not true. What they mean is if farmers' crops like soybean, rice go down, or you lose money, the government is still going to pay you. So that's still
well, you also got
a
paid to not grow certain things,
and
or when you grow things, the government comes and takes them away. Andy Lee.
Right.
There's a
It's
couple,
crazy.
It is crazy. There's a couple things here. The catfish oversight plan is necessary. Catfish,
I forgot.
No.
You're a big noodler.
No. They are rude. They pick fights with other fish.
They're bottom
and
feeders.
Someone needs to oversee
like
them. So that's
catfish.
important. The other thing is, and you poo-pooed this, Matt, but the National Christmas Tree Board will be essential to help fight the war on Christmas.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
it gives new strength to those of us who are combating this war. And, you know, for you to just pretend it doesn't matter, I think is it's a slap in the face.
And it's only
facts we've
it's a slap
15 cents a tree.
It's a
so-
slap
Well,
in the
it's
face.
culturally
Facts we've
insensitive,
overlooked.
is what it is.
It's a slap
right,
in the
you're
face
right.
to the fallen in this
I think
war.
you're right.
Is what it is.
fallen
Matt.
Christmas tree?
Shame on you.
There is a lesson
Fallen
here.
soldiers.
This bill is always has
No, it's-
bipartisan support, despite the fact that everyone else seems to
Is
hate
it filled
and
with so much
understand it's
pork
racist.
because pigs
Well,
live on farms?
It's the equivalent, but it's the equivalent
And they
of,
crawl and slop.
It's the equivalent of the presidential candidates in both parties taking the ethanol pledge in Iowa.
Right.
It's exactly
But
the
it's
same.
also-
It's exactly the same
But
thing.
it's
They feel
midterm
like they
elections.
have to do it.
But look, midterm elections too. A lot of the stuff in the bill went back to districts, you know, where members want to get reelected. So let me put some pork in the belly of my state, so to speak. I guess enough of the pig jokes, but
I can never get.
I
enough,
love
frankly.
swine personally.
Yeah,
I love bacon.
I love a nice
You know.
pulled pork that's slow cooked.
Delicious.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
A nice Cuban restaurant around the corner. We should get some. All right, very good. Andy and Crystal, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Gorgeous as always. 2 minutes hate. We have been so good to you, and your father and I are disgusted. Where's the love mail when we need it?
Tomorrow, tonight, I can't
Welcome back to The Independence. We are now joined for our bi-weekly or bi-monthly flogging from Fox Business Human Resources Director Bernie Mac Smith. This is 2 Minutes Hate, where we find out what you viewers really think. So what'd you bring today, Bernie?
Well, thank you for having me back again to discuss things that I have to read every day about your program. Here's one of the things that we have. The subject line is, "Cancel this show." I've watched several episodes and find this show to be immature, irrelevant, and would probably opt to watch one of your many infomercials rather than this garbage.
In fairness, the infomercials are pretty good.
They are good. Some of the commercials are good, too.
Gilmore writes, "Pancreatic cancer mortality is really what the show needed to get the momentum going." I assume that was for some kind of healthcare segment. I have no way of knowing. It could have been about a circus.
We weren't trying to give anyone pancreatic cancer, for what it's worth. Like, we were not irresponsibly saying that people should get pancreatic cancer.
Not that time, no.
The next one comes from Mr. Walter Rosenbaum of Indianapolis, Indiana. "Hey, Lisa Kennedy, my father, who has gender identity issues, loves your earrings."
That is,
So
that is a compliment.
It's good feedback.
Okay,
I wanted to include both.
That's a
Go
compliment.
Hoosiers.
Yeah. Next, from Brian Elliott in Atlanta, Georgia. "Please tell Kennedy to count to 10 in her head every time she finishes a statement or question."
1, 2.
In your head. It's hard.
Please, Mr. Mac Smith.
Thank you.
Continue.
Thank you. Dan Eikenson writes, "Sorry, at Independence FBN, don't want to be mean, so I won't name names, but one of the hosts and her voice are way overbearing." Now, we actually talked about this downstairs, and we think that it's either a mean comment directed at you, Kennedy, or a very mean comment directed at Matt.
It's probably the latter.
I'm going to go for that, too, and,
Yeah.
and majority rules.
Yeah, certainly not about me.
Jason Gahn wrote, "Tell that ass man Camille, good job keeping his mouth shut when y'all were discussing Booty Girl. Hashtag wife in charge."
Well, that is a fact, and that is not criticism.
Finally, Francisco D'Anconia writes, "This show was worse than watching old people."
It really, well, I mean, that's pretty good. If you're into that, 'cause there's some websites that are. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope this helps all of you.
I hope this doesn't happen for a long time. And, I mean, thanks.
You're welcome. I missed my niece's piano recital to be here, so I hope that we can actually move forward.
Well, thanks for watching us tonight. Stossel's in this time slot tomorrow night. You're going to love him. For Matt Welch and Camille Foster, I'm your hostess, Kennedy. I still really like you, okay? And I want to wish you a good night. Thanks.